Good afternoon, everybody. It is 3:56 p.m. Eastern Time, October 3rd, 2017. All right, so here we go, guys. We have another I believe it's Invest 90 now. If you guys remember last night, we were specifically talking about this area that was not yet being recognized by the National Hurricane Center. We had our Invest here that we were talking about that was half on land, half off land, and we were basically expecting that to die out unless it did a northern approach into the Gulf. That interaction with land did bring that down to a 0 chance, so they took it off the chart. We do have this area here next to the Bahamas we were watching very closely. We saw one big storm blowing up right here. That frame is all we had as of last night. And we said we wanted to watch this area because if you follow my mouse, this water vapor moving up through central Mexico, through central Texas and southern Texas, and then through Louisiana, then back into the Gulf to the west of Florida. Picture that as an opposite force against these storms, and what that's doing is that it's causing that counterclockwise motion to begin. So we have all the ingredients we need for this storm that's near the Bahamas right now. If you look at the 5-day geographical chart, it says it's a 10% over 48 hours, 10% over 5 days. That's a low percentage, but nonetheless it's here, and we saw those storms, so that's why we were pointing that area out. But more importantly, guys, we were focusing on this area right here. Once again, it was not recognized at the time of the video last night. But if you go to about 3:32 in the video, that's where I begin to dig into this area. And I told you guys we need to watch this area because there was a clear cyclone formation going. I'm just playing it real quick. You can see right here's that spin we were talking about, and that's why this area stuck out to me. And that's why I said that more than likely we were going to see an invest put on this area. I didn't expect it to come off the chart as 60%. But then again, guys, it's a lot of movement going on here, so it makes sense to me now. We got all the storms here that we need. We have the counterclockwise movement, and we got plenty of warm water. Those are all the ingredients you need to create tropical depressions. And again, guys, I was explaining this fan situation to you. I like using this as an example. When you blow on a fan and you hear like that flutter noise and you slow the fan blades down, picture that as shear winds. That's what we were dealing with the shear winds being very low in the south and in the Gulf of Mexico here. And those two invests we had one about here and one here, and we were watching them for development, but those shear winds ripped them apart. Those shear winds decide whether these storms live or die. And we've been talking about how those shear winds are going to be pulling to the north. There's no question about it. It's already happening. And just like a fan blade, the second you stop blowing on that fan, it begins to spin back up again, and it wants to go back in the motion that it's heading towards. And we already have that counterclockwise motion. Those shear winds have lifted, and we already see the counterclockwise motion beginning to absorb these storms, and that's why it's giving such a high chance to it. You can see right here the invest from yesterday that's now off the chart is clearly over land. It did not make that north turn into the Gulf, so that's a good thing. But just as this one is out of our way, we now get a 60% chance for tropical depression formation in the South Caribbean here, guys. So we need to watch this area. Very important. The models are showing this thing coming up right through the gap here. This is a significant area because if it goes through the gap, it's got no land interaction to weaken it. And right now it's being projected to go into the Gulf, putting every state here, including Mexico, even though Mexico is a little bit to the South Gulf, Texas, Louisiana, all these states here, guys, especially Florida, because they stick out. We're not picking on Florida here, but unfortunately, Florida is one of those states that just sticks way out into the Caribbean. We got the Keys down here. It's just a target, guys. It's unfortunate, but it's the way it goes, especially in October. And with a hurricane season as busy as we've had, I am not surprised to see this type of action. So we have 2 and maybe possibly 3. I'm going to call this out again. We have this area now, 60% chance of cyclone formation. We're going to go to the models and see what they have to say. We have this area with a 10 and 10, 10% over 48 hours and 10% over 5 days. Now, my new concern is this, not so much these two systems becoming their separate entities, but possibly this one forming, moving up through here, and then accumulating this one into it. before they form as storms, they have the opportunity to bring in more moisture and become stronger quicker, guys. The more storms we have, we got all the warm water we need, and with no influence from shear winds, that becomes an issue. And that's why we've been waiting for this, and unfortunately it's beginning to happen. Those shear winds leave, and now we have complete cyclone going on all over the place. We got a cyclone here, we got one here, we got one beginning near the Bahamas, and also, guys, we are not done with the west coast of Africa. You can see all the storms blowing up here, and all we were looking at was how part of this moisture was being pulled up to the north, and then we had low cloud moisture being pulled to the south. And again, same situation as up here. That is reverse momentum, and that may begin a counterclockwise spin here, as well as a fourth one possibly to the west of this, which we won't really get into right now. That may be for another video. I'm trying to keep this one quick just to update you guys. But once again, really quick, 60% chance of cyclone tropical depression formation right here in the South Caribbean, and it's projected to move north into the Gulf. So now we're going to check out our models and see what they have to say. Alright, and I'll start with the GFS here. I'm going to run through these quick so I can get back to researching this a bit more and get you guys a more detailed video. But I'm going to run through the GFS first. They're finally, after 3 or 4 days of absolutely nothing being shown here, at least on the GFS. All the other models had storms forming. The GFS had nothing even as early as 2 hours ago. But now here we go. This is what they're saying. GFS has it forming right where we're pointing it out, guys, right at that 60% area, and it moves through this gap, which storms tend to do for some reason. They like going through this gap, they avoid the land, and it gives them potential to grow. So as we move forward here, it moves into the Gulf, and then it's putting basically even the east side of Texas is at risk for this right now. I mean, basically all the coast of Texas is at risk. We don't know exactly what direction this is going to take, but according to the GFS right now, it's putting Louisiana, Mississippi, even Alabama, and especially Florida with the panhandle sticking out here, all at risk of this storm. We don't know yet how much it'll grow, but it is given a 60% chance for tropical depression and then tropical storm formation, and the next step would be a Category 1, guys. This is a smaller area to develop. When we watch these storms come off the west coast of Africa, they have this entire western warm water belt to travel in to grow. So that may be something that's on our side, is that these storms don't have a lot of time to form. Now, the only thing we need to watch out for are the global winds and our jet stream now. We need to see if the jet stream will influence this. By the looks of the GFS, it looks like the jet stream is going to have some momentum in pulling this to the north. What we don't want to see is we don't want to see this thing come into the Gulf and sit here, because that's when they begin to grow. Similar situation to Harvey. Harvey sat here for a while, got very powerful before it went into Texas, and almost did a backtrack back into the Gulf and then hit again. So this is why we watch these areas, guys, but the 60% right off the bat is definitely cause for concern. That doesn't usually happen unless they're fairly confident that this will at least become a tropical depression, and then if it stays over water, especially this warm water, chances are it's going to develop. So we'll run through the rest of the GFS. I'll backtrack a little. There it goes, right between, and then up right in. It looks like, as far as this chart goes, it's going to hit the coast of Louisiana and mostly Mississippi, with the tails of it getting in towards the little bit of coast with Alabama, and then the panhandle of Florida. So that is the GFS run. I'll work it all the way through. We almost have development according to the GFS of that system I'm also watching. We're going to change now to the European model. We'll see what they have to say. Got to back it up to the beginning. And here we go. We'll move forward. That system once again off the west coast of Africa. And the Europeans have it basically doing the same thing. Maybe coming through this area, touching Cuba first, but then making its way into the Gulf right there, and then basically putting more of the panhandle of Florida at risk, which would be southeast Alabama, and then goes right up through Georgia, and then more than likely the Carolinas if it takes this path. So again, that's two models that now have this storm forming and making landfall by October 10th. Maybe a little before, maybe to the 8th. So we're not talking about a 10-day forecast here anymore, guys. We're talking 3, 4, 5 days out. And with that 60% chance of formation, the confidence is getting pretty high. So this is why we do these updates. This is why I want to keep people educated on this stuff and learn how to read these charts before they have to be warned by the TV. There's no need to wait for that. You should be prepared at all times. I'm not telling you to go spend money and go buy all the water and gas you need right now. What I'm trying to recommend to you guys is to keep an eye on this stuff on your own, as well as keeping on your local news, especially these states now. Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas all need to be aware of this. This is not something to mess with, especially with a 60% chance. This is the CMC, the Canadian model I've been using pretty often. Again, they're not that good with the storm path. They are good at projecting when the storms and where they form. Again, same deal. Moving up into the Gulf, it looks a little weaker on this model. But again, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Panhandle in this model. And then if you guys notice out in the Atlantic, here we go. Look at that. 1, 2, 3. A triple Fujiwara effect going on in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. How crazy does that look? Very interesting. Check that out. Two of them branch off and move off with the jet stream. The other one lingers for a bit. And that's our last frame. It looks like it begins to backtrack. So guys, this is why we keep doing this. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but these are 3 significant storms right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and we don't know where they're going to go. We don't know if they're actually going to form, but the fact that they're showing this action is something to take note of. It's very important. And we will check out NAVGEM as well. Let's see what they have to say. Moving forward, this is about the time they project it to form. And there it is, moving right between, also clipping Cuba, actually, and then goes into the Gulf. Same exact states, guys. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida once again. So a fairly high rate of confidence going into this possible storm, guys. This may be Nate if it gets named. I don't see any other systems that may be named before that. The only other possibility I'm thinking would be this invest here that may be a named storm. Again, low percentage, 10% and 10% over 48 hours and 5 days. But again, guys, really quick, this is what we need to watch right now. They are showing the cone shape here of the direction it's projected to travel. One way or another, if this thing forms, chances are it's going to end up in the Gulf. And then that is when we need to really, really pay attention to this. All right, guys, I'm going to dig into this now. I appreciate you hanging out with me, and I will bring you an update as soon as possible. Thank you all.